Today on the Life Science Success Podcast, I'm honored to welcome Laura Prisk. Welcome, Laura.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of an intro to the listeners here. So many of the leaders that I have on the show have directly done work in life sciences. And I do think that there are other people in kind of leadership spaces as well as, places outside of life sciences, definitely that can have a broad impact on this space. And so one of the reasons for having you on, Laura, is that, I really, believe at the end of the day, as organizations grow and they grow in terms of leadership and things like that, there are people like you that could have a vast impact on those organizations. And so that's why I wanted to have you here. And I really am excited to talk to you more.
Me too. And thank you. It's been interesting because I've been doing this work for a long time. I started out as a corporate communicator and kind of grew my way into leadership. And I've had people question, well, how can you work in the tech space, or how can you work in manufacturing, or how can you work in banking? And it's like, look, people are people. Communication is communication. Leadership is leadership. I might need to learn your lingo or the culture in your organization, but those things are foundational regardless of what you're working in.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, one of the things that I do know about you is that you're, DISC certified as well. I saw in your background that you have the John Maxwell leadership, training as well. And I mean, to me, I find it interesting because whenever I went through my MBA, one of the books that they hand you is, John Maxwell's book on the 21 laws of leadership. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're kind of given that as a foundation book. And
yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, I think, leadership is leadership, and followership is followership. And so the more that, that you can tie those things together, it's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself? What are you doing now? What have you done in the past?
So I've always been really curious. Some people label that differently, as you can imagine, but I've just been, a lifelong learner, fascinated by people, who they are, why they do what they do, how they make decisions, how they navigate their lives, how they communicate or don't, how they handle conflict. And so when it was time to go off to college, I studied communication. And one of the things that I noticed was my degree was interdisciplinary. So I had to take classes through the business program and journalism and technology and graphics and a couple of other divisions of the university to get a communication degree. All of those other schools of study had to take one communication class, and it was Speech 101. And as you can imagine, most people hate public speaking.
Right.
And so they endured the class and got out of the communication department as quickly as they could. And it fascinated me because we have to communicate all day, every day with everybody around us, regardless of what we're doing. And so at first I thought, well, that's not fair. They should have to take more communication classes if I have to take classes in all their disciplines. But then I realized it's kind of job security, right? Because now as I'm out in the professional world and once I shifted into consulting and executive coaching, I realized that the people piece of the puzzle is the thing that is most frustrating, most sticky, the hardest thing to navigate. And so it's to my benefit to have dipped my toes in all of those areas. And I think it's to a lot of people's disadvantage that they didn't stay longer in the communication space, learning about conflict resolution or interpersonal dynamics or small group dynamics. And so that's allowed me space to be able to add value and to contribute and to help a lot of leaders and organizations sort of tweeze apart those people puzzles that are not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I think, like you describe, whenever I was in school, like as quickly as possible, got in and out of communication. The same with English class. So for anybody that hears my fobbles in my language and things like that, it comes from I grew up in Midwestern Indiana, and it is who I am. But at the same time, the interesting part is that what you're describing to me is that you got more of the foundations of facilitation and things like that in your earlier education, where I didn't get any of that until I got to GE Healthcare. And I feel like, I really learned facilitation from, the teams there. And it sounds to me like you got that early on.
As I think about it, I don't know if it was fundamental to my education or if it's just something that I naturally do and have been honing. Um, Although I will say in my undergraduate studies, there was a course called Psychology of Communication, which was really hard to get into. It was required. Everybody wanted to work with Dr. White. And so I took that class, and in full candor, I got the lowest grade of all of my major classes in that class. And it is the class whose content I still use today, decades later, that has been most foundational for me. And it is that psychology of, who are these people and how do we communicate and how do we decide what something is or isn't, and, all of those things. And then I was blessed, you asked about kind of how I got where I am today. I was blessed when I did my master's program that the university offered a sort of, you can take this path, or design your own.
Mm.
And so I was able to design my own program, taking the core courses, of course, but within the electives, I could focus on the organizational communication, the psychology aspects, the leadership aspects, to really keep honing those skills. So I worked as a corporate communicator in a lot of different businesses and a lot of different industries over the years, and eventually came to realize that my curiosity is one of my secret superpowers, and it helps me help people understand who they are, where they're going, what they're doing, how they make decisions, and to be able to apply that skill to looking at other people as well. And so it's about that increasing emotional intelligence and seeing other people for who they are and where they are. So I've been functioning as an executive coach for about 10 years now on my own, doing some consulting around communication, all of the people related pieces to a business that leaders often struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great lead in to the next question I had for you. So, your business is called Leadership and Life Potential. Who's your ideal client for that?
That's a good question. And it's one that I have been peeling back the layers on for 10 years. They keep becoming. So right now I'm really focused on three buckets. And I think there are three specific kind of demographics, but psychographics. The first is CEOs and business leaders, business owners who are brilliant in their technical expertise, right? Whether that be finance or accounting or IT, whatever it might be, operations, production, but do struggle sometimes with the people related aspects in their business. So they recognize that having a confidential, external, objective, strategic thinking partner to help them think into and strategize around those sensitive areas is really powerful. That's one bucket, and I have a ton of fun getting to do that. The second bucket is people who are at a transition point with their life and work, like they know change is coming or they know they need to make a change, and they're not quite sure how to navigate it, and they want to make sure they do it thoughtfully. And so in that space, I can act as a skilled travel guide, if you will, because I've been through that process a number of times, and I've helped a lot of people get through that and create that thoughtful and intentional whole life plan so that they can step into something that is satisfying and allows all the pieces, parts of their life to fit together in an integrated way. And then the third bucket of people that I really enjoy working with is to do the deep, deep dive on kind of personal growth around deep exploration to what are my core values, what matters most to me, and what do I need to focus on to make sure that stays a priority. What are the deep beliefs I have about who I am and who you are and how the world works, and how do I use those beliefs to help me become the person I'm stepping into? And in that space, we also dive deep into the personality, like you mentioned, DISC. I use that sometimes. I use a couple of other assessments. We do some strengths finder work to identify your naturally hardwired skills so that you can articulate them and use them confidently. And then we also look at kind of the influences that shape us that are come from family and religion and culture and education and life experiences and all those things. Again, the outcome of that usually is that integrated whole life plan, but it's a more intense deep dive experience.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, sometimes in your life, I've just found that it's so important to have somebody that is not living it day after day, sort of looking at it and saying, well, why did you do this? Or why did you choose that direction? And at least for me, professional coaching is something that I've enjoyed. But I also, appreciate just, additional opinions, in terms of,
Mhm.
what do you see? And, what could I potentially, do differently or better to more get to my ideal place in life?
Yeah. I have a little visual aid that I use sometimes with my clients. So oftentimes, a client will be looking through this little hole. This is my life. This is my framework. This is my lens. And so part of my role as a coach is to expand that window, right? And say, there are all these other things, expose them to new perspectives just to expand their thinking, not to tell them how to think or what decisions to make, but just to make sure they're seeing other possibilities. And then also sometimes it's holding a mirror up to people to say, here's what I hear you saying, here's what I hear you not saying, here's what I see you stepping into, here's what I see you avoiding, and how can I help you use these insights and this awareness to help you move from where you are today to where you want to go and create success in your life on your terms.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important that we do find the best place to kind of amplify the things that we want to personally grow in our lives as well.
Yes.
So, in your career, what specifically led you to consulting? So, what led you to this point in your career?
Well, for anybody who is looking at my resume, they would say, this woman is unstable. She's a job hopper. And I have been in a lot of roles, a lot of positions, a lot of different businesses and industries. And, it took me a long time to figure out that I was in the wrong job. Communication comes naturally to me. It's crucial, right? We have to communicate to do anything in life, whether it's personal or business or community, whatever. But I kept finding myself in organizations where either here's the job we want you to do, Laura, and just do that job and do it to the best of your ability, but we want you to stay there.
Right. Stay in your box.
And yeah, and I'm not a stay in my box kind of person. Like that is so stifling and suffocating. And so if there wasn't a growth opportunity either existing or that I could create, then, oh, it's time to go. There were times where I found myself very acutely aware that my core values about what's right and wrong and how we treat people and the things we do or don't do were really out of alignment with the organization and people in the leadership, that over time I recognized I'm not in a place to influence that. This is how it's going to be. And so I need to go do something else if I want to maintain my integrity. And so in 2002, I was blessed to go through this literally life-changing leadership program in the company I worked for. And I had one of the most uncomfortable soul-bearing experiences of my life in that program. But it literally is the thing that woke me up to, oh, you're doing the wrong kind of work. What you really should be doing is growing people and doing organizational development and helping people communicate and interact and work together better, not just being the communicator, right? And so after a few more of those repeat experiences of being in the wrong place and not having room to grow, I just realized, it was coming soon to be the time when I would step out on my own. So I actually started building my coaching and consulting business on the side while I had a full-time job so that I had something to step into when I left.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting how different people wind up at that point of, just saying, hey, look, maybe I can have more influence across a lot of other organizations if I just could step out on my own. I also talk to a lot of people that still, are in corporate America today. I just had a LinkedIn interaction with somebody that just said repeatedly, I wish I could go do what you do. I just wish I had the opportunity. And to me, the opportunity is there. It's just a matter of, are you going to step into it or not?
Mhm.
It is risky. It is uncomfortable. And, it was smart of you to start planning, I think in advance of that happening to say, this is what I want to go do. So you also have a podcast as well. And so, tell me a little bit about the show so that other people kind of get a better perspective of what does your show focus on and those sort of things.
Well, if you haven't noticed already, I'm not a dip your toes in the water kind of gal. I really am driven, fed by, motivated, inspired to have deep, meaningful conversations with people about real stuff. And I know not everybody's in that space. I've been told more than once that my interest in that makes some people uncomfortable. But for several years, I had this voice in my head that said, Laura, start a podcast. And I said, you're crazy. Laura, start a podcast. I'm like, oh. And so finally I sat down and I thought into it and I thought, oh, this is the opportunity for me to create the space and the time and create that environment where it's safe to dive into those deep, meaningful conversations and invite people in that I want to explore things with and not have to wait for them to happen organically. So it's called Making Space for Conversations That Matter. And in it, I have spoken to people about marketing, about leadership, about Medicare, about what we can discover through sound frequency, hypnosis, coaching, anxiety, just all these things that I'm curious about with really amazing, brilliant, creative, big thinkers. And so it's been a ton of fun. It's available on all the usual podcast places. So yeah, and you were a guest and I had a great conversation with you.
Yeah, it was great to be on and spend a little bit of time, as well with you kind of exploring a little bit deeper, just topics around leadership again. And, some of the things that I've experienced, as well, centered in that. So, to go back to a little bit more meaningful conversation in our conversation here, in terms of, some of the challenges that your clients face, what are the typical sort of things that would make somebody pick up the phone and say, I need to call Laura to, have a conversation, or even maybe bring her into the organization that we're working in?
Yeah, that's a great question because the starting point is often different than where we end up. So for example, some of the leaders that call me will say, Laura, I've got this really brilliant, high performing person who gets great results for my organization. They're, sales, engineering, whatever it is. But there's just something about them that rubs people the wrong way. They're harsh, they're abrasive, they are leaving a wake of collateral damage. And I can't ignore it anymore, but I don't know what to do with it. I'm afraid to let them go. I don't know how to help them be better, but I can't ignore what they're creating. So that's one thing. I had one leader who said, we're experiencing a lot of change and I'm seeing signs and hearing signs that are telling me there's something dysfunctional in our culture. I don't know how to figure out what it is or what to do about it. I had one leader who said, I have a great VP of production and I have a great VP of operations, and they're both brilliant and they make good decisions. But every time they're in a room together, it's like this. And I feel like I'm babysitting because I'm continually pulling them out of meetings into storage closets in my office and their office and an empty office to mediate. And I'm supposed to be running and growing a company. I don't have time for this. And so, we work together to fix that problem, right? Conflict resolution, morale issues, cultural issues, communication issues, recognizing I know these people are more brilliant, talented, experienced, but that's not how they're showing up. That's not what they're delivering. And so I don't know how to draw them in more, inspire them more, and get them to perform at the levels I'm capable of. So those are some of the things that I get to.
That's, I mean, it interests me in a lot of ways, because I've seen those sort of toxic cultures, I would say, in my past. And I've also seen, leaders who continually, I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier today, leaders who continually undercut the people that are around them, just as a, they're trying to be, I think, strong and demonstrate a strong sort of personality, but at the same time, the leaders that they're interacting with, they're undercutting them and, creating this toxic culture. And so, whenever you come in, where do you start whenever you have to, start having these conversations? Because I mean, sometimes I think sometimes, let's just say if I were the person, creating the toxicity, I'm going to be the least probably willing to accept that position, right? And so, just kind of coming at it from that angle, your job's got to be pretty tough walking in.
You are absolutely right. Sometimes I am blessed with people who are just so frustrated and so desiring some resolution that they're willing to see and hear what they need to see and hear. And here's almost always the truth of that. If you're a leader in an organization that has been enabling, tolerating, creating these cultural issues, dysfunctions, toxic spaces, conflict, whether you're actively involved in it directly or you're just not dealing with it, you're part of the problem. And I know that's hard to face. So with some people, I've been blessed to be able to say, look, Don, you're creating the situation or you're enabling it. Other people, I have to be a little more sensitive and a little more delicate in how I approach that, because I have had some people call and say, my team's all dysfunctional. Can you fix them? Right. Well, yeah, maybe, but how about if we start with you? Let's see how your leadership is working, how your communication is working, so I can help you navigate and lead better. And so, that's often a big part of it. But I've literally been faced with, I had one leader who walked into a debrief meeting on his 360 and he said, I already know who I am. I know what I have to offer and I don't need your help. And I went, oh, wow, is this going to be interesting? Yeah. Now, that was not a quick fix, and it took a lot of erosion, shall we say. I worked with him and the rest of the leadership team in that organization for about 18 months. And I had about 6 months left on my contract. And we were getting close to that time where I was kind of phasing out and closing out some of the work I was doing. And he said, so Laura, what's next? What are you doing with this next? And I said, well, I'm finishing this and that. And he said, well, are we bringing you back after that? I really hope we do, because you're making a tremendous difference here. And it was all I could do to not go, can I have that in writing? Because he was one of the toughest characters I had to deal with. And he's flipped the corner. So even those hard ones are able to grow.
Phenomenal testimony for you. So yeah. I mean, I mean, after having been through a lot of different personality tests in my career and things like that, it is sometimes it's some of the toughest feedback that you get, but at the same time, hopefully, it's impactful as well. And at some level, maybe you associate with it or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you don't link it together and you need somebody to tie it together for you, it's nice to have somebody that can be a personal coach to help you just make that link, because maybe you're still missing the key point, and if you just get one thing from an assessment, maybe that one thing could be life changing for you. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. So, earlier you asked me how I got here, and I said something about a leadership program that I went through that was the most uncomfortable experience. So, I was in a position in my life where felt like I was in full body armor all day, every day. There were things going on in my personal life where I didn't feel safe, and I was dealing with one of the most toxic employees as a direct report of mine at work. And like that wasn't taxing enough. All of the people above me knew he was toxic before I got there. He had
Mm,
run off the two supervisors before me. And all of the people above me knew this. They didn't want to fix it, and they just wanted me to make it better. Just fix it, Laura. So, no support from them either. And so, when I went through this leadership program, we had a 360 review that, addressed leadership competencies, communication styles, negotiating styles, something, all those other things. I was assessed by everybody from the CEO to my direct reports and everybody around me anonymously. So think about how creative and confident and effective someone's going to be when they feel like they're in full body armor all the time.
right, right.
And so I get all this feedback and I'm like, oh my God, that is so totally not who I am. That is not what I want to be putting out in the world. And so it was really like, oh, this feels so icky. But it was the light bulb, right? It was the key lesson that said to me, intent does not equal impact. And what it is you think you're putting out in the world is not necessarily what people are experiencing. And if you don't know what that is, you may be doing a whole lot of damage that you don't want to be doing. And so started my quest to help people see themselves clearly so that they could be more intentional in how they showed up. And so my not so little secret is that I get to do this work with people and I feel the power of it deeply because I needed it.
Yeah.
I experienced it and I had to grow through it. So I'm not a travel agent sitting in my office going, yeah, this sounds like a good thing for you and that might be good. I do the work I do because I had to go through it.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's so important, and such a good thing to share as well, because many of us have been through a difficult time at some point in our career, and maybe we've gotten feedback that we didn't particularly like, or we've been in a position where we felt like we had to be in body armor. I often tell people that whenever you're like that, to me, I kind of liken it like sunburn. You Once you're sunburnt, it doesn't matter that somebody's trying to touch you because they care. That doesn't matter. It's at that point, it's a little hard to kind of take on more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes we need these things kind of change direction. And I at least, personally appreciate those sort of things and sort of moments as well.
Yeah. And, I guess one of the gifts I have been told that I have is that people recognize very quickly that I truly do have a heart to help, a heart to serve. And we may go through some hard, uncomfortable things together, but we're going through it together. And my purpose and intent and focus is to help you come out the other end better than you were when we started and knowing someone's on your side as you go through.
So important. So there are 3 questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
What inspires me? Oh, well, nature, like the complexity of the universe, of everything I see, the seasons, growth, That's one thing. What inspires me, big thinkers, people who are actively awake, alive, thinking, contemplating, examining things, and looking to create something new and to collaborate. And anything that piques my curiosity, I will go down the rabbit hole learning.
Excellent. And what concerns you?
What concerns me? Um, a couple of things, very acutely right now is that, all of this technology we've created was supposed to help us work less and be better connected. And it's actually done the opposite, right? So now we're supposed to be connected and alive and available 24/7, which is unhealthy and insane. And it's also made us less connected, I think, because we're texting and we're emailing and we're Snapchatting and we're, whatever, but they're not those real meaningful face-to-face conversations. They're quick, they're not heartfelt, they're not really getting to the roots of things. And so I'm concerned that we're not taking the time and making the effort to find common ground and to be curious about people and get to know who they are and understand what they're thinking and why they're doing what they're doing. And it just seems like the world is so on that, ready to blow up, and we're so ready to jump to conclusions about what's going on and why people are doing what they're doing and how we got there. And it's destructive and it's painful and it's short-sighted, I think. And, I just want to be having more meaningful conversations so we can get to know people as individuals and communities and find that common ground, because I know it's there.
Yeah, it is interesting because I mean, to go back to the idea of the podcast and then especially kind of the, the video session here, it's not easy doing this, and it's not easy, being on camera. It's not easy kind of working through kind of, how you would think through a meaningful conversation. But at the same time, if this is to become a continual part of, what we're going to see for the future, right? More, virtual interactions and things like that. Hopefully we can become more and more comfortable, with these sort of interactions in the future. But I agree with you. I think it's, how do you dig down and have really deep questions and deep conversations when, a lot of us are very time bound in terms of our day. We're pressed to kind of, you've got this amount of time to do this thing, whatever it is. And you got to get to the point and, hopefully, get to a conclusion and then move on. And it's not, I would say in the virtual world, it's a little bit different because I think originally a lot of us, at least, especially me, I thought, hey, look, I'll have a little bit of extra time because I'm not like moving from building to building or meeting room to meeting room. But at the same time, there's less time because now all of a sudden I turn off, my camera and my phone from one thing and flip to another. So I completely understand. What excites you?
What excites me? Seeing people wake up, seeing people have an aha moment, seeing people recognize something new, have a new thought, broaden their perspective. I'm excited by some of the young people I've been exposed to, their creativity and their compassion and their heart to do good. And what excites me, my focus over the next probably year at least, and this started at least a year ago, is I'm really diving deep into spirituality and creativity and curiosity. That's my focus for growth for the next foreseeable future. And that's pretty cool stuff.
It's a really good set of tasks for direction by far. So congratulations on that part of your journey.
Thank you.
So Laura Prisk, thank you so much for being a guest today on the podcast. I greatly appreciated having you here. Thanks.
Absolutely. It's always fun to spend time with you. So thanks for inviting me in.
Thanks a lot.